Right now, somewhere inside your head, there is a hole, a gap where the first years of your life should be. You were there for every single second of it. You laughed, you cried, you learned your own name. You took your very first step, and someone in the room cheered. You tasted food for the first time and saw your first sunrise. But you remember almost none of it. Try right now. Reach back as far as you possibly can. The picture dissolves into fog long before your 3rd birthday. Everything before that wall simply isn't there. And here is the truly strange part. Your brain was wide awake the whole time. It was watching. It was recording. And then, quietly and deliberately, it erased almost all of it. So where did those years actually go? And why on earth would your own brain throw them away? Scientists have a name for this gap. They call it childhood amnesia. It is not a disease, and it is not a sign that anything ever went wrong. Almost every human being on Earth carries the exact same blank space. Study after study finds the same pattern across every culture and country tested. Most adults cannot recall a single clear event from before the age of 3. By around 3.5, a few foggy fragments finally start to survive. The handful of people who claim earlier memories usually hold only scraps, a flash of color, a single strong feeling, a blurry room with no story attached. And often, even those turn out to be borrowed from a photo or a family tale. This is deeply strange because babies are not blank or asleep inside. A 2-year-old is paying fierce, hungry attention to absolutely everything. They feel joy, fear, surprise, and comfort, and they feel all of it intensely. They clearly remember things in the moment, for hours and even for days. So the memories were definitely being made at the time. That part is certain. There is no sharp wall either. The fog thins out gradually as you grow. Some people remember back to age 2, while others draw a blank until 5 or 6. The mystery is not whether you experienced those years. You did, every second. The mystery is why your adult brain cannot reach back and find them again. To solve it, we first have to understand how a memory is actually built. Here is the first twist. Your baby brain was the greatest learning machine you will ever own. In those forgotten years, you learned more and faster than you ever will again. You learned to recognize faces, to grip objects, to crawl, to stand, and to walk. You absorbed an entire spoken language almost out of thin air, and all of that knowledge is still inside you, working perfectly right now. So clearly the baby brain can store some things for an entire lifetime. The secret is that there is not just one kind of memory. There are several. One kind is your skills and habits, like riding a bike or tying a shoe. Scientists call this procedural memory, and it runs quietly in the background. You do not need to recall the lessons to keep the ability for life. Another kind is semantic memory. It holds facts, words, and meanings. That is how you still know what a dog is, even without recalling when you learned it. But the kind we are hunting is episodic memory. It is the diary of your life. A specific birthday, a scary fall, one particular golden afternoon in the sun. Childhood amnesia barely touches your skills and your facts. It erases the diary. Your abilities survived the great wipe. Your personal stories did not. So why would the brain carefully protect one kind of memory and delete another? The answer is hiding in one small, unfinished structure deep inside your head. Deep in the center of your brain sits a curved structure called the hippocampus. Think of it as the tireless librarian of all your memories. Its job is to take a single moment and file it away as one lasting record. It binds the sights, the sounds, the smells, and the feelings into a single neat story. The very same structure also builds your inner map of places and spaces. That is why a smell or a song can suddenly drag a whole forgotten scene back to you. Later, when you want to remember, the librarian walks over and pulls that file off the shelf. But in a baby, this librarian has barely even shown up for work. The hippocampus is one of the very last brain regions to fully mature. Through your first years, its delicate wiring is still being laid down, piece by piece. So moments keep pouring in, but they are never properly filed and bound together. The experience happens, the feeling is real, and then it quietly slips away. There is no finished shelf yet that is strong enough to hold it in place. It is a little like trying to save a document before the hard drive is even installed. The information shows up on the screen, but it has nowhere to be stored for the long term. This alone is a huge piece of the puzzle, but it is still not the whole answer. Because while the librarian was missing, something far stranger was happening in there. Something that was actively wiping the few shelves that did exist completely clean. In a baby, the brain is not just slowly growing. It is genuinely exploding. Brand new brain cells are being born at a truly staggering speed. This flood of fresh neurons is wonderful. It is exactly what lets a baby learn so fast, but it comes with a hidden and rather surprising cost. Each new cell has to muscle its way into the network that already exists. To plug itself in, it breaks old connections and builds completely new ones. Scientists believe this constant, restless rewiring overwrites the earliest memories. Because a memory is not a solid little object you can lock in a drawer. It is only a pattern, a delicate web of connections between brain cells. When you keep tearing up and rebuilding that web, the old pattern is simply lost. Imagine writing a careful note on a chalkboard in the morning. Then, every few minutes, someone wipes part of it away to write something new. By the end of the day, that very first note is completely gone. That is roughly what your young brain did to its own earliest memories. It quietly traded your baby memories for the power to learn at lightning speed. For a fast developing brain, that is a trade absolutely worth making. And the best evidence for this idea does not even come from humans. If this overwriting idea is right, it should show up in other animals as well. And that is exactly what scientists have found. Young mice, just like young humans, forget their earliest experiences. A baby mouse can learn something one day and lose it within weeks. An adult mouse with a calmer brain holds the very same memory far longer. Then researchers tried something clever and quite revealing. They artificially boosted the birth of new neurons in adult mouse brains. Suddenly, those adults began forgetting things, just like the babies did. More new cells crowding in meant more memories being overwritten and lost. Then they ran it the other way around, slowing that flood of new cells in young brains. and the young animals suddenly held on to their memories for much longer than normal. That is a powerful clue. The forgetting was not random damage or simple decay. It was tied directly to how fast the brain was busy rebuilding itself. This is why scientists believe childhood amnesia is not a flaw at all. It is a normal built-in feature of any brain that is growing at full throttle. Your forgetting was the price of the most explosive learning of your entire life. But the biology is still only half of the story. Because there was one more piece missing, and it may be the strangest of all. To remember your own life, you first need a sense of self. You need a me that all of these events are happening to. But a newborn does not yet know where it ends and the world begins. To a tiny baby, its own hand and a nearby toy are almost the same kind of thing. That sense of being a single, separate person develops slowly over time. Around 18 months, a toddler first recognizes itself in a mirror. Put a small mark on its face, and it reaches for its own face, not the glass. That is the dawn of a self, but it is still only the very beginning. The other missing piece is language. We store the stories of our lives as words, in sentences and quiet narration. I went to the beach. The water was freezing. My dad laughed at me. A baby simply has no words yet to wrap around a moment like that. There is also something called memory talk, when parents ask, "What did we do today?" Children who get more of that early storytelling tend to form earlier, richer memories. Without language and a clear sense of self, a memory has almost no anchor. It cannot be tied to a me, and it cannot be told later as a story. So it floats free for a little while, and then it quietly drifts away. This is exactly why your first solid memories tend to appear around age 3 or 4. That is precisely when your sense of self and your language both come fully online. So what about that one early memory you would swear is completely real? The birthday candle, the family dog, the golden afternoon down at the lake. Here is an uncomfortable truth about those treasured early scenes. Many of our earliest memories were never actually remembered at all. They were quietly rebuilt much later, out of photographs and repeated family stories. You heard the tale told so many times that your brain constructed a little scene to match. Then it filed that invented scene away and proudly stamped it as a real memory. It feels vivid, it feels deeply personal, and yet you may have built it yourself. Researchers have shown again and again how easily a false early memory can be planted. Tell someone a convincing story about being lost in a shopping mall as a young child. Add a couple of small believable details, and then simply wait. A surprising number of people will soon remember it and even invent new details of their own. This is not your brain failing you. And it is certainly not lying to hurt you. It is your brain doing exactly the job it was actually built to do. Memory was never designed to be a perfect, frame-by-frame video recording. It was designed to be useful, flexible, and just good enough to help you survive tomorrow. So your missing baby years are stranger than simply being deleted. Some of what you think you remember was gently invented long after the fact. This is also why two siblings can recall the very same day in completely different ways. Each one quietly rebuilt the scene from their own angle, their own stories, their own feelings. But that raises the real question. If the years are gone, Where did they actually go? Here is the part that quietly changes everything. Those forgotten years were not wasted, and they were never truly lost. While your diary memories faded, another kind of memory was being carved in deep. You may not recall your mother's voice from infancy, but your brain learned to feel safe with it. You learned which faces meant comfort and which sounds meant danger. You built your very first map of how love, trust, and the whole world seemed to work. Psychologists call these early patterns implicit memory, and they can last a lifetime. They quietly shape how you react, what soothes you, and what makes you flinch even today. You cannot replay lessons, but you are still living inside their results. In a strange way, the blank diary may even be a gift. Imagine carrying the raw, vivid memory of every fall, every fear, every helpless moment. A clean slate lets you grow without the full weight of those first chaotic years. There is one more fascinating clue hiding in all of this. The age of your earliest memory is not actually fixed in stone. It shifts from person to person and even from culture to culture. People raised in families that tell rich, detailed stories often remember further back. In some cultures that deeply prize personal narrative, first memories arrive noticeably earlier. That tells us memory is not just biology. It is also built by language and by being asked to remember. So, your missing years did not vanish into nothing at all. They became the hidden foundation that everything else was carefully built on top of. You cannot see a foundation once the house is finally standing, but it is silently holding up every single room, and you are standing on yours right now. So why can't you remember being a baby? Because the librarian was still in training, the wiring was being torn up and rebuilt at full speed, and you had no words and no clear self to pin a memory to. Your earliest years were never recorded for playback. They were spent building the very machine that does the remembering. The diary is blank, but the foundation is rock solid, and you live on top of it every single day. But here is the next mystery, hiding quietly inside your skull. Every single night, your brain replays your memories, rewires them, and sometimes builds entire worlds out of nothing. So what is actually happening in your brain when you dream? That is a story for next time. This was Doodle Anatomy.